And welcome back to the Private Cloud Jumpstart, creating and managing a private cloud with System Center 2012. I'm Simon Perriman, Technical Evangelist, and I'm joined again by Sean Christensen, who's going to be talking about service delivery and automation, how to monitor and operate the environment. Sean, why don't you introduce yourself again?
Sure, Simon. Thanks for having me. I'm Sean Christensen. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager with Microsoft, focusing on System Center. And my specific area that I spend a lot of time with is looking at this area of service delivery and automation. Really the people, the process side of how we look at setting up and as well as monitoring and running your private cloud environments.
Excellent. So let's take a look at where we are in the overall agenda of the Jumpstart. This morning we've covered the monitoring and operating for the private cloud infrastructure and the infrastructure components. A little later in the day, Adam will be back and we'll be talking about application management. But Sean is going to focus on really the service delivery and automation piece. So how do we optimize that? And really sit as that conduit between the end application owner and the hardware infrastructure guy. So when the end application owner makes a request, we understand the request, we have standardization, and we can then go efficiently and quickly and automatically go and fulfill that request, mapping it to the underlying hardware resources that we need. So why don't you tell us a little more about the detailed agenda for this session?
Sure. Well, with the first part of service delivery and automation in the last session, we talked about how to set up and actually deploy and deliver services to our customers. What I'm going to focus on in this session is really about how we go about running and we approach really monitoring and operating our private cloud environments through service delivery and automation. There's three areas that I'm going to spend some time focusing on. First one is integration. How we get that end-to-end visibility of our infrastructure, of our applications, of the services that we're delivering within the private clouds. Second area I want to spend some time on is talking about this area of process automation, how we approach and what are some aspects of how we can automate various processes and various behaviors within our private cloud for our organizations. And the last area, and probably the most exciting one for me, is this area of reporting. We've done some major changes with respect to reporting inside of System Center 2012, and I'm really excited to show everything about this. I'm excited to talk about, but I'm really excited to show what we can do with the reporting capabilities now.
All right, sounds great. Let's jump into it.
Okay. So I showed last session, and you've seen this slide already, when we talk about System Center 2012 from a cloud and data center management standpoint. Really, the key point from service delivery and automation is this is something that touches on all aspects of your infrastructure, your applications, and really your cloud environments, whether it's automating processes, looking at a self-service-centric approach to delivering those services and running them, and ensuring that you've got flexibility in how you approach delivering services and managing those services, but still maintain their appropriate controls. So really have the flexibility to do what you want, but then have the ability to delegate that out and maintain the appropriate controls. When delivering IT as a service, similar slide that you've seen, where I spend most of my time is that right there in the middle with Service Manager and Orchestrator. If you can see my mouse hovering around that service delivery and automation piece, which really brings together that application owner and their self-service experience and the data center admin or that service provider and the ability for them to build and provision and run that underlying infrastructure, underlying private cloud services to deliver a good experience to the application owners and consumers. Now, when we think about running or monitoring and operating the services that we have within our organization, again, similar to my last session, let's step back and let's take a look at these two personas of our service consumer and our service provider. And this, again, is that interrelationship between them where aspects of integration really are for the purposes of the service provider to get that single view of our infrastructure, to get that end-to-end visibility of how things are put together so we can run them and manage them effectively. For the service consumer, they need to know what's going on, get a sense of how things are performing, how are we trending, where are we seeing the errors within for our applications, for the services that we deliver. That's the aspects of reporting that we're going to touch on. And between these two is that automation to help deliver those reports, to help to ensure that errors are remediated quickly in a standard way, in a consistent way, that removes that ongoing need for, or minimizes the ongoing need for someone to sit there physically monitoring logs, monitoring servers, monitoring performance, and be able to focus on those things that are higher value, more important to the organization. That ongoing relationship and that automation really also has the aspects of the processes and the systems that are built into those built into those automation aspects of System Center 2012 and the private cloud solution. So let's get into this, how this looks like and how it's fit together. Again, we talked about reporting, we talked about process automation, we talked about integration. Let's start with that process automation piece. And this is where the CMDB, the Configuration Management Database, really comes into play here in driving and giving us the basis for automating our processes, and whether that's through the service catalog, as we talked about last session, the templates that we use to standardize either proactive or reactive processes, and the workflows that are embedded, whether they be process-related workflows or systems-related workflows. The reporting piece is being able to get information out of our environment, be able to report on performance, report on, say, chargebacks, report on consumption through our data warehouse and our reporting capabilities. And lastly is integration. I haven't met a senior executive who doesn't break out into a cold sweat when we talk about integrating systems. Why is that? Because historically, integrating systems has been hard. We make it just a lot easier to be able to bring management tools together, bring external systems together to get greater visibility of what's happening within our environment.
And I think that's one of Microsoft's big advantages as we look at the private cloud, right? This cross-platform management. You know, a lot of our customers, they already have these investments in their existing systems. We don't want our customers to throw them out and say, hey, all of these investments that we've made over the past 10 years are worthless. We want them to continue to support them, and with System Center 2012, they can keep using what they like, what they've invested in, but still gradually move to the Microsoft platform as well.
Simon, you bring up a really good point with this concept of integration. How do you leverage what you already have, but build for the future, take advantage of the new capabilities that System Center and what Microsoft brings to the table without having to completely retool? I mean, that's a significant effort. We make it easier to be able to manage those third-party tools, integrate to those non-Microsoft platforms as well as Microsoft platforms, third-party management tools and the like, and get that visibility. But also to make sure that we're not having to continuously maintain skill sets and have that as an ongoing cost to the organization. We can skill up, we can build our capabilities in our new areas, and we can work with those to maintain our existing environments as we transition, and give the IT pro the ability to manage the transition over time and not be inundated with, I got to learn all this new technology, I still got to maintain my skill here. They can blend that and move at the pace that they need to. That's most appropriate for their organization. So, integration, process automation, and reporting. Integration really is about that end-to-end visibility. I can't stress that enough. It's actually something that understanding how your infrastructure is put together, understanding how your applications and your services are delivered, whether that's from the code level in the application all the way down to the network components, and seeing what that looks like is really, more and more to me as I talk about it and talk about it with customers, is a really key aspect that doesn't often get a good enough understanding within the IT pro community. Process automation is about standardizing and delivering those processes and automating those processes that help manage the work that we do and help ensure that we're delivering quality services to our customers, to our service consumers. And the last area is around reporting, being able to report across the System Center stack and be able to pull information from multiple repositories and report on it through a single tool. And in fact, using a key tool that I'd say is present on pretty much everybody's desktop all around the world if you're using Office. So let's talk about integration. Integration for end-to-end visibility is being able to reconcile disparate repositories of data to provide a comprehensive view of your IT infrastructure components. It allows us to provide a central point of reference across those IT infrastructure components and to be able to understand the dependencies and relationships between IT assets and components to help support efforts. Whether that's support effort, whether that's a development project that we have undergoing. Simon, let me ask you a question. You've done application development work in your lifetime, as I have. What's one of the challenges if you're writing a new system for an organization that IT pros often need to address when they start out that project?
Well, I mean, there's always the scary learning curve, right? You know, I've got this new system. How does it work? I'm new to it. I know how to write code, but will it work and will it function in the private cloud? You know, the whole application framework and just understanding how to use a new system, that's usually the biggest thing that scares customers.
It's really how to use it and how it's going to work within my existing environment. Where am I going to put it? Is it going to, if I put it on a particular server, what else is happening inside that same machine? I've been in my lifetime as an IT pro myself, working in service management, building these types of systems. There's one story that I remember talking about with a customer where we walked into their data center and we pointed at a particular machine. And I said, or the person I was with said, "What's on it? What's physically installed on this box?" They got 3 separate answers from 3 separate people. Because no one really had a good understanding of, hey, what do I have installed and where does it sit?
Right.
And whether it's a development project or a new infrastructure project, knowing what you have and where it is and how they relate is a key element that saves significant amounts of time, because every project's got to understand that. And if you have that already, you can reference it, you can get access to it, and you can see that information. Very quickly, that's one of the key elements that key benefits that a CMDB provides, a configuration management database, to the IT pro. We provide that as part of the private cloud solution from Microsoft to give people that end-to-end visibility, to make it easier to deploy, but it also makes it easier to manage our private cloud infrastructure by having that in place.
Now, we may have some people that didn't join us yesterday. Could you just quickly review what exactly is the CMDB?
Sure. CMDB is an acronym that's an industry term, stands for Configuration Management Database. If there are any ITIL version 3 junkies out there, there's also this concept of a configuration management system, which essentially is made up of multiple repositories of data, maybe a centralized configuration management database. And the idea is you have a central point of reference of configuration items, or CIs, which can be anywhere from a physical machine like a laptop, to a server, to an application, to a networking switch or hub, to the connections between them. That's one key aspect. What makes it a configuration management database is not just having a centralized repository of all that information that you can reference, but also understanding the relationships between those configuration items. So, we have our laptops. What are they connected to? Well, they're connected to a localized switch. That's connected to a server that allows us to get directory authentication, so on and so forth. And understanding those interrelationships, especially in a private cloud environment, makes it easier for us to support and respond to errors within our infrastructure and deliver better quality service.
Great.
So how we approach integration from a system center, from a private cloud perspective. Again, we start with Service Manager, we start with Orchestrator. We have a bidirectional connector between these two that allows us to bring into the CMDB automation activities in the form of the runbooks into the Service Manager CMDB, and we demonstrated that in the last session, as well as for Service Manager to execute those runbooks from within Service Manager out to Orchestrator to be able to make calls. So you don't have to have an Orchestrator runbook sitting out there waiting for something to happen. Service Manager can execute it and tell it to go do something and execute a piece of automation. We then have to do 3 things. One, we get information into the CMDB. We do this through our connector framework within Service Manager and through Orchestrator and its integration packs to pull data from Virtual Machine Manager, Operations Manager, Configuration Manager, even Active Directory, and pull data into our CMDB and reconcile it together so we get a central point of reference. And the information, computer information or application information that may be stored in Virtual Machine Manager, as well as Operations Manager, as well as Active Directory, is all reconciled together, so you're only seeing one single entry. You're not seeing 3 different entries because it came from 3 different places. Using Orchestrator, we can also pull that information into the CMDB using the integration packs and building a runbook to connect to that external application, or external system, or external database, query for the necessary data that we want, and pull that into the CMDB and further enhance the records that we have inside the CMDB. So that's getting the information in. Now that we have it, we need to do something with it and be able to do something with it, whether that's standard operating procedure, standard maintenance task, or automatically remediating an error that we see within our private cloud environment. And that's leveraging Orchestrator to actually initiate automation runbooks to take action, whether that's fulfillment or that is physically or technically remediating an error that we find through, say, an operations manager alert. And the third area is really how do we then tell people about it? How do we report on it, either through notifying people through, say, Exchange, using a notification activity out of a runbook, or through the Service Manager data warehouse and reporting via dashboards and Excel pivot tables that allows us to do greater enhanced reporting across the System Center stack. So that's what we think about when we look at integration. And what I want to do is I'm going to show a little bit about how that all fits together, really walking you through some of the connectors and how we set those up. Because when you think about building this out, building up those connections, getting that integration in place, it's actually really easy to do. Again, from my own personal experience, I used to do this for a living. As a professional services consultant, made a lot of money doing it. Not for me, for the company I worked for, but we would spend weeks building integrations. We've actually taken all of that and we've made it easier within System Center to build these tools to integrate with each other and talk to each other very quickly and very easily.
Excellent.
So let me go ahead and switch over to our demo environment here.
And what components are you going to show us here?
So I'm predominantly going to show you the Service Manager connector framework. But again, this is touching our virtual machine manager, operations manager, configuration manager, orchestrator. So we're touching all of these systems, but we're doing it from a centralized place.
So you're going to work in one interface, yet this is able to map out to the other System Center components?
Absolutely.
Is that how it works?
Yep.
And you said this was part of Service Manager?
This is part of the Service Manager component.
Now, if you launch Service Manager, are you going to get this interface, or is it a separate utility that you have to launch?
No, this is out of the box.
Great.
Straight in here. So what I'm showing you right here on the screen is this is the Service Manager console. So provided right out of the box, and we have in the administration workspace our connectors tab, or connectors folder here. This is where we configure those connections to our external systems, or the other systems within the System Center stack, and also to Active Directory, that allow us to pull data into the Service Manager CMDB and be reconciled to provide us a single view. So I'll walk through a couple of these just to give you an idea of how we actually set these up and what's the information that comes through. The first one I'm going to look at is our Virtual Machine Manager connector. So I've it named here, it's VMMO1 because that's the name of the machine that I'm connecting to. I have it enabled, and I can see when the synchronization last ran and when it last finished, and did it finish successfully. So I'll go ahead and bring that up. We'll take a look at the details of how we actually set this up. So up comes the Virtual Machine Manager connector window, and very simply, what's its name, and what's the Virtual Machine Manager server that we're connecting to? Who do I connect as? And hit OK. What this then does is connects over to Virtual Machine Manager and pulls across our service templates, our virtual machine templates, and a whole host of details related to configuration items that Virtual Machine Manager knows about and manages. Now, we don't actually manipulate or change anything in that database, in the Virtual Machine Manager database. We just read it, pull it across so we can reference it inside of the CMDB and use it to standardize processes, standardize fulfillment activities, and remediation activities.
Great. So all of this information, we're pulling it from the various sources, consolidating it into the CMDB.
Correct. Let's take a look at the next one, which is Configuration Manager. This is a really neat one that doesn't always get used as often because customers don't often know about it or know the power that we have within this one. Configuration Manager, again, I define the name, what management pack where I'm going to store this connector information, what my Configuration Manager database is, so what's the database and what's the database name that I'm connecting to, what my credentials are. I can then specify what collection I want to grab. So Configuration Manager allows us to group computers and information by collection. We can specify here in our connector which collections do we want to synchronize? So we can grab, in this case, I'm just grabbing all systems, the all systems collection, or I can specify a number of smaller collections if I want to stage the growth of my CMDB to specific groups. So if I only want to roll it out to, say, North America or Europe or Asia, and I have a collection for each one of those, I can select one. It'll bring across only those computers that reside in that collection. Or I can be as general as I want and pull across everything. I can then schedule this. So I can schedule this to run either every day, or I can schedule this to run once a week at a particular point in time. This allows me to ensure that my data is always up to date. So that's the Configuration Manager connector. One thing that we also, you didn't see there, but is part of the Configuration Manager connector is the ability to automatically log desired configuration management incidents into Service Manager from Configuration Manager. So you've used desired configuration management before, and you know we can specify a baseline. We can then monitor a collection of computers, servers, data for compliance to that baseline. What customers had to do is they had to then monitor that from within the Configuration Manager console to see, is there a non-compliance? Now I get to go take action. What we've actually built within the Configuration Manager connector to Service Manager is when DCM runs, identifies a non-compliance, it automatically logs an incident into Service Manager for that particular computer. So from within a central location, we get configuration management related incidents automatically logged, and we can then automate processes around that to either automatically notify somebody to go fix, automatically remediate, if we're using an orchestrator runbook, and then report on it through our data warehouse. Now it also knows we have the Configuration Manager 2012 capabilities of enforcing settings. So we have a couple different ways to actually achieve the same goal, depending on how the organization wants to do their business.
Now, is it possible for customers to, use their own custom connectors to basically, they have some other system, they want to go and push this information into the CMDB?
So yes, there is. There's two ways you can go about doing that. One, yes, you could write your own connector using the SDK that's provided as part of Service Manager. Your other option, and probably the easier option, is to create an orchestrator runbook. Again, very low coding requirement interface to be able to connect out to that external system, standard activities to query databases, read files, and the like, and pull that data and write it into the CMDB.
Now, will other, ticketing systems, do you expect them to actually come out with their own connectors that will work with System Center? Meaning, rather than have to have people either write their own runbooks or actually code their own connectors with an SDK, are we expecting any partners to actually come out with connectors?
Interesting, very good question. Not connectors, but integration packs. In fact, we have partners who have created integration packs to third-party management tools like BMC, HP, VMware, IBM, where we actually have those, HP, can't forget that, where we actually have integration packs that are being created and will be published and available, either free or for a small fee, to allow our customers to write runbooks that interact with System Center and those third-party tools. And be able to create tickets or query databases. Say, let's use an example of BMC's Atrium CMDB. There's an integration pack that's being published that will allow us to create a runbook that allows us to query the Atrium CMDB, update our own CMDB, and even query our CMDB and update theirs.
So it could go that way, it could go that way.
It'd be bidirectional. Now, the key thing to note when you're writing that integration, you need to have some knowledge of how that other system works to be able to write that integration. We are providing the activities to query CMDB, to update CMDB, update records. We're not providing the out-of-the-box run books themselves that say, okay, go update this CMDB record.
Okay.
You need to build that run book. You will need to build that run book, but again, drag and drop interface to do that. But the activities will be there.
Great. Now, we've actually had a few questions. This is slightly off topic, but, there's been some questions. What's the easiest way to just get some basic understanding of how to build a runbook? So, brand new to Orchestrator.
Yep.
I like the concept. What would you recommend for just kind of the basics of how they can learn?
What I tell people is go to Microsoft TechNet. Go look up the System Center library. Under System Center 2012, there's the Orchestrator subfolders. And there is a couple of really good examples, samples that walk you step by step through how to create a runbook. It's kind of like your whole Hello World program that we all wrote when we were doing initial computer science programming. This is the Hello World of Orchestrator runbooks.
Nice.
It's got about 2 or 3 examples in there that will get you started and show you the capabilities of what you can build.
Right.
Just need a standard installation of Orchestrator, and you can start there. People who when people say, how do I get ramped up on this, I say, start here because this will show you the capabilities of it. And then it becomes, let me back. Then it's just, where do you want to go from there? What do you want to automate? What do you want to standardize? Look at your process that you want to deliver and map out what that process is, and then translate that into a runbook.
Great. Additionally, I know that a lot of our learning partners out there, certified
Yes.
learning partners, they have courses on both Opalis, the older version, as well as working on courses on Orchestrator. And additionally, the Microsoft Virtual Academy, www.microsoftvirtualacademy.com.
Absolutely.
There is a course that will be released very soon covering actually integration between Service Manager and Orchestrator, so how you put those pieces together and how you can get up and running yourself.
There you go. Fantastic. Okay, let me move on, talk and show a few more connectors, and then we're going to go ahead and get out. Last two I want to touch on are Operations Manager. 2 key pieces of Operations Manager. One is getting information about the configuration items that we see within that are monitored within Operations Manager, and how we get those into Service Manager. And this is the connector we're looking for here, where we actually connect and show, the server we're connecting to, and then what management packs we want to bring and synchronize across, or bring across into the Service Manager CMDB. So we can monitor and synchronize only a specific number of management packs, or you can grab everything that's being monitored within Operations Manager, and we will pull that across into the Service Manager CMDB. One thing to note here is you need to make sure that you then import these same management packs that are in Operations Manager into Service Manager. This is something that's come up that I've had a couple of questions on. So key thing, you can select them here, but then you need to grab those management packs off of Operations Manager, out of Operations Manager, including the dependencies, and then import them into Service Manager. And then we schedule it. Again, running every day, every week at a particular time. One thing to note here is you do want to stage when your when your connectors run. Don't have them run at the same time. Give them maybe an hour to an hour and a half difference between each connector running, so that you're making sure that you're not colliding data when you're synchronizing them into the CMDB. The last one is similar to Desired Configuration Management, is the Operations Manager Alert connector. This allows us to take Operations Manager alerts from Operations Manager and automatically translate them into, or create Service Manager incidents inside Service Manager from within Operations Manager. Now, I've had this scenario come up a couple times when I've been working for customers where we actually didn't want to use this, because the customer was nervous that every single alert that showed up inside of Operations Manager would automatically show up inside of Service Manager. Now, that is not the case. We can tune that down. We specify what server we're connecting to, and then we can specify what routing rules we want to enable for our alerts. So we can monitor only specific management packs. We can monitor all management packs. We can monitor management packs that meet certain criteria or specific alerts. This allows us to be as granular as we want, or as general as we want with what alerts get turned into Service Manager incidents. Now, one thing also to note is these 2 little buttons down here, where we have 2 checkboxes. One says close alerts in Operations Manager when incidents are resolved or closed. or resolve incidents automatically when the alert in Operations Manager is closed. One of the challenges I've seen customers have, and I've had them myself, is you get orphans. You end up with a Operations Manager alert that doesn't have a corresponding incident, and it was supposed to. One got closed, the other didn't. This gets rid of that issue and allows us to keep both the alert and the Service Manager incident in sync. So if you resolve one, the other gets closed, or you close one, the other gets resolved. And you never end up with those orphan incidents or orphan alerts. So that's a look at how we set up the connector integrations inside a Service Manager out to those external systems across the System Center stack to either pull data in or also create some incidents either from Configuration Manager or Operations Manager into our CMDB. So let me go ahead and get back over to our presentation here. Simon, how'd that look?
That looked great. There are actually a few more questions that are coming up just around, connecting these different objects.
Sure.
Now, if we have an existing orchestrator, so let's say they have Opalis or some other third-party orchestration solution, can they integrate that with System Center 2012 Orchestrator?
So a third-party orchestration solution integrating with System Center 2012. I would, couple questions. Potentially, yes. I would first ask, does that third-party orchestration solution have a connector into System Center 2012, or can we do a script or a .NET script, because then we can use our orchestrator to connect to that orchestrator and write the integration from that perspective.
So same kind of questions, right? Does it expose APIs? Is it scriptable?
Absolutely.
If it is, then we can connect it.
Yep.
Great. The second question we have is regarding the integration with Configuration Manager.
Okay.
So is there any integration from Configuration Manager to Service Manager related to the new software catalog? So basically, we have a catalog, there's a new application that we need to approve. Can we integrate with Configuration Manager to review what's in the catalog, to look at other servers in the environment and say, hey, this is missing, let me go push it there?
So Configuration Manager and Service Manager, using the connector, will bring across hardware, software, even OS and patch information about that computer into the CMDB. So we know what's installed for that end user. We also, if we have Asset Intelligence turned on in Configuration Manager, we have the primary user, so we know whose machine it is. With the new software catalog, that allows us to request and also install software and schedule that, or have that installation take place directly on our machine. When the Configuration Manager agent then runs, updates its inventory, that's going to flow through into Service Manager, and we're going to get that information. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way is we're actually bringing out a Solution Accelerator integration between the Service Manager service catalog and the Configuration Manager software catalog. So we can actually link these two together and allow people to launch the software catalog directly from the Service Manager service catalog. And in fact, let me see if I've actually got that running.
Great.
So I'll go back. So I brought up my demo environment again, and I've gone to the home page of my service catalog. And let's see. Give it a second here. I hadn't primed this one, so it's just refreshing itself.
And so again, what component are we looking at here?
I'm looking at the service catalog inside of Service Manager.
Okay.
So this is something that we're working on and making available, because we've got, essentially we have these two portals. We have the software catalog and we have the Service Manager service catalog. How do we make sure that these two are talking to each other? This seems to be wanting to take a little bit, but essentially what I can say is that's something that we're working on, bringing those two closer together. There we go. So I have my little software catalog option here, and what we're making available through the service catalog is the ability to simply link out to the software catalog from a central portal. So instead of having to constantly, okay, which portal do I go to? Make it easier to go to one, you can get access to the other and drive the appropriate requests and drive the appropriate approvals and have all those integrate and work together.
Great. Now, there has been a question, while we're looking at this this self-service portal, I've got this question maybe a dozen times, so
sure.
I think it's worth bringing up again. There are multiple self-service portals that are available in System Center 2012. Can we clarify the difference between, when you go and install VMM, you get the option for a self-service portal, app controller, service manager, what are all these different self-service portals, and what's kind of the specific use case for all of these?
So just let me clarify. So app controller, yes. Service manager, service catalog, yes. The VMM SSP that was available for the previous virtual machine manager prior to 2012. Is that the SSP you're referring to?
Yes, I believe so. There was a question saying during the installation, we still get prompted about, do we want to install a VMM self-service portal?
Okay, that one I'll need to double check on. What we have is, so you have the Service Manager Service Catalog. That is your primary portal for accessing and requesting services from your data center, from your private cloud.
Okay.
New private cloud capabilities, and new capacity, new virtual machines, the ability to request something from IT, or from your service provider who's providing information, providing services to the service consumer. App Controller is a consumption tool. It allows you to access and manage the virtual machines, the services, the applications, and the cloud subscriptions you have available to you as an application owner. So you can't request anything through that, but what you can do is you can deploy your services, you can run those, start them, stop them, scale them out to really allow you to manage what resources are allocated to you. How you requested those, how you obtained those, you went to the service catalog.
So service catalog is more about getting things set up. The app controller is more about ongoing management. Is that a good way to kind of break it down?
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Is service catalog, I want something. I need something, whether it's I want something new or I have an error or have a need. App controller is about I've got stuff. How do I operate it? How do I run it? How do I make sure that it maintain it as a owner of an application?
Great, thanks for clarifying that.
Cool. Okay, whoop, wrong button. Let's go ahead and move on here. So let's we talked about integration. Now I want to get into some of the, once we have that integration in place, we know what we have in our environment, now we can get into some process automation activities. Now, there's three areas I want to touch on with respect to process automation. First one is service level agreements. How we ensure that we have are driving a consistent service experience and able to manage that and monitor our goals and our objectives in providing that experience. The other area I want to talk about is release management. And this is around how do we ensure that what we are provisioning, releasing into production within our private clouds, within our data centers, is controlled, and the change to those environments are minimized in terms of the impact and the duration of change. And the last area is around proactive and reactive operations. How we drive consistent delivery, greater productivity, and even support compliance initiatives and activities within our organizations through how we approach proactive and reactive operations. So first area I want to touch on is service level agreements. There's three areas as part of service level agreements that we've introduced as part of System Center 2012. It's the concept of business hours and calendars, service level metrics, and service level objectives. And all three of these work together to deliver our service level agreement capability. A calendar allows us to define business hours, allows us to define holidays, and we can have multiple calendars set up to correspond with different time zones, different holiday schedules, different locations for our organization. We then have what we call service level metrics. Now these allow us to define time-based metrics for our different work items, our incidents, our service requests, which are two that we provide visible views of what those metrics are out of the box, but you can do this for almost any work item inside a service manager. So our calendars allow us to specify a Monday to Friday or Saturday to Tuesday or whatever our business hours need to be and what our start time and end time is for those. If you wanted 24 hours, it's 0000 to 11:59 or 23:59 if you're using the 24-hour clock. We then have our service level metrics, which allow us to specify the calculations of when we start and when we stop measuring a particular metric. So such as created date versus resolved date if it was an incident or a service request. Once we have those, we can then define a service level objective. Now, a service level objective is really what is the resolution service level objective for hardware-related incidents or service-related requests. So these are supported for all work items. An SLO is defined to a predefined queue. What that basically means is what type of request or what type of incident are we in fact wanting to measure. Is it an incident? Is it a service request? Is it a change that we're making in our organization? And then we're also able to specify target and warning thresholds. Now, what we mean by that is your target threshold is when your SLA is going to breach. So if you have a commitment to somebody that you're going to respond to them, say, Simon, you contact the service desk and you want to respond, or we've agreed that we're going to respond to you within 20 minutes. Our target threshold is that 20-minute mark when we would breach our commitment to you of when we're going to respond to you. Now, to make sure that we actually achieve that and keep you happy, that's where we specify a warning threshold, where we say, okay, if my commitment is to respond to you within 20 minutes, I'm going to set a warning, say, at 15. So I get a warning notification, oh, I got to talk to Simon, he's already contacted us, so I still meet your expectation and still achieve my particular objective.
So it really does enhance the IT staff's ability to resolve these questions and keep them on track too.
It helps keep them on track, and it does it in a way that promotes proactiveness, as opposed to, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but when I was an IT pro, it was objectives were things that I was often penalized for. If I didn't make it, I got in trouble. So this allows us to make sure that, hey, we're going to help you ensure that you're achieving your objectives by giving you, one, yes, we specify when you have to have something done by, but we're going to make sure there's a warning. And we can actually take action and notify based on warnings, based on target thresholds. So we help keep people on track.
Great. So just another safeguard to make the life of the IT pro easier.
Absolutely. I can vouch for it personally. Things like this has helped me historically with my customers as well. And the last area is notifications. And we notify in a couple of different ways. One, the old standard, email. We can notify on both warning and on breach, so that warning threshold as well as breaching our targets. The second area is we actually do a little color coding of incidents and service requests based on that warning and breach of SLA. So you actually, when you pull up the particular work item, you actually see what state it's in. Are we green? Means we're on track. Are we yellow or orange, or are we red? Oop. So first off, we have our service level objectives, and we have our notifications. You can see there the screenshot that's come up. We see on the left-hand side also a little icon showing us where that particular request is, particular work item is in its SLA's life cycle. And if we pull that up, we can see the details about that service level and where are we. In this case, we have two SLAs that are tied to this particular work item. One has been breached, the other is still active. So we can have multiple service level objectives tied to a specific work item. How these all come together is really a simple equation. We start with our calendar, our business hours that we're going to operate under. We add to that our metrics, our response time, our resolution times. We combine that to make our service level objective, where it's what work item we're wanting to monitor and measure, and what queue that relates to. So high priority incidents, medium priority incidents, hardware, software related incidents and the like. That gives us our work item SLA and allows us to then drive that behavior, ensure that our IT pros are staying accountable to the services that they deliver and the service agreements that they're committing to with their customers. So that's service level agreements. I'm going to go and touch on and talk about the release management capabilities that we're bringing out as part of System Center 2012. Now, for those who aren't as familiar, release management simply focuses on controlling the release of one or more changes into production, either to an application, to an infrastructure, or a related service within our IT organization or within our private cloud environments. From a project perspective, in a project, you might see this as handoff to operations. How do we release this to operations and it gets released into productions? From an operational standpoint, how are we managing the ongoing rollout of changes, really to ensure that the impact and duration of change within our infrastructure is minimized and is managed in a controlled manner, so that we ensure that customers maintain their services, and that the environment is not consistently changed on an ongoing basis, and that we're not breaking something that's already been changed previously. That may seem kind of trivial, but I remember working with one customer personally who literally had daily change windows because they were implementing changes to fix changes that were implemented the day before, to fix changes that were implemented the day before. It was a really bad ongoing cycle. We tried to sit down with them and help fix that, make it easier through implementing some better processes.
Thanks.
So a couple of concepts that are added into System Center 2012 as part of introducing release management. We first have a new work item called the release record. This allows us to define our release, and the process is represented by a hierarchy of activities within that particular release record. We have two new types of configuration items. An environment, where we can identify releases to dev, to test, to production, and then also a build configuration item type where we can define a build version number, so version 1.0, 1.5, 1.7. We have two new roles, a release manager and an activity designer. The release manager controls the overall release. The activity designer is the one who drives and identifies what are the activities that need to be included as part of that particular release. We have two new, what we call container activities, parallel and sequential. This allows us to execute activities within a release record either in parallel or in a sequential manner, so that we're not stepping on the activities of other changes within our particular release. We have new workflow features, allowing us to skip failed activities as well as skip unnecessary activities. We have release templates, so we can encapsulate a lot of this and standardize the types of releases that we're going to do. And we have new relationships that we introduce, parent-child releases, change-to-release dependencies that allow us to actually link change request activities to release activities, so that we can actually drive the release of multiple changes and even drive the automation associated with change requests through a release record. So let's look at how we coordinate that and bring that together, because this is something I think is actually really powerful. First off, let's set the scene. We have three projects here. Each project has a series of change requests, and we need to encapsulate those inside a monthly release cycle. We have 3 releases, January to February, March, and we have our change requests. Now, as part of good release management is about coordinating when we do these changes into what release time frame. So we specify what releases we're going to do, and what allows us to determine, hey, is a release not going to work at a particular point in time, therefore we're going to move it to another release window so that we don't step on and clash with another change that's taking place. In that case, what we had is Project 2's server upgrade potentially was going to clash with Project 1's application upgrade. So we move one out so that we can update them. We can make sure that we're not disrupting production and enhancing the risk of one change failing over another. Once we have that release coordinated, what we're able to do is, when we have our change request and our release record, we have our change that's approved, and the change being approved is now waiting to be deployed. What we're able to do as part of our release is actually release or link that change activity to our release record, so that when we're ready to release and ready to deploy that release into production, it will actually connect out to our particular change request, execute that activity, and then report back that that change activity is done, and our release record continues on. So you have both the change request being completed as well as the release record referencing that particular change. So think of it as our release record controls all the changes that take place, but we can then stage what change takes place when in the cycle of the particular release record. Because we can do this in either parallel or sequential manner, when we get more than one change taking place, we can link out to each of those individual change request activities and bring them together inside of a single release and ensure that we're coordinating and managing the rollout of those changes, and that they're happening in the proper order and that they're not going to collide with each other. What this allows us to do is ensure that change is more successfully rolled out. You have fewer failed change requests you have a minimized disruption to your production environment or your dev environment or your test environment, because you're making sure that you're deploying those releases in a coordinated fashion. So we talked about service level agreements, we talked about release management. The last area I want to talk about is proactive and reactive operations. Now, this is looking at a number of different components across the System Center stack. And what I mean by proactive and reactive operations is really how we approach and deliver service and how we respond to services either in a reactive manner, so we're responding to an error, or proactively either through a standard operating procedure. Let's step back and let's even think about reactive processes from a manual perspective. So you got someone's gets a call at a service desk or is monitoring a console, monitoring an application, and they see an error. What often happens? Do you think they look at a standard, hopefully they've got a standard operating procedures book, they flip open to the right page and they march through their steps. They do that enough times, they tend to think, oh, you know what, I've got this down. And so they don't bother with the book anymore.
Maybe they skip a step the next time, right?
Exactly. Maybe they skip a step. What happens? Well, manual processes tend to be error prone because, hey, I missed a step, I forgot about it, or I was trying to do this quickly because I had something else happening and something happens. If you get a lot of errors, what do you need to be able to fix those? If you're doing it manually, you need more people, so they're resource intensive. You may have documentation, you also may not have documentation in place. Sometimes they can have a negative impact on service level agreements. If you get a lot of them, all of a sudden you're hitting your service levels because you need more people, more resources to be able to address that particular error. And ultimately it results in support costs increasing because you need more people, or you need to redo something, or yeah. You also, one of the last things is, especially in this day and age when we have to prove and support compliance activities, manual processes don't resonate well with compliance audits. They want to see, do you have something standardized? Do you have it documented? Do you have the evidence that you're following that process in an ongoing manner? When you got something manual, probably goes without saying, it's kind of hard. And I mean, I remember sitting down doing an audit with an auditor and as an IT pro, and it's not a pleasant experience when you're having to talk about, yes, here's the processes, yes, I've got the process documented, and they look at you going, great, thank you, flip that to the side, now where's your evidence that you're following it? Ooh, okay. Manual makes that challenging. We make that a lot easier. We look at things from a automatic standpoint. Manual really is about things don't often follow the same path. They bounce around, they go all the place, and you can't really guarantee that that's going to happen the same time the next time. Let's bring automation into this. Automation is a really good thing. It helps IT services scale up and scale out. Whether you get one error, you get 100, they are managed and addressed in the same manner. It drives a consistent outcome. It allows you to capture those best practices. So you document your process, you document your best practices of how to address, either fix that error or fulfill that particular request, and it happens the same time. It supports compliance activities because you can actually demonstrate, here's the process that's followed. Oh, by the way, here's the run log of all the times that this process was executed every time this particular task or error showed up. So you can demonstrate proving compliance and supporting compliance becomes that much easier. Your service level agreements are on the increase because you're able to demonstrate that. As errors or requests come at scale, you can ensure that you're achieving those service agreements, and your operational ROI improves. As more requests come in, and hopefully maybe not more errors, you don't need additional people or additional staff to be able to address them because you have the automation in place to deliver it. Now, I touched on capturing best practices. This is a key aspect in defining these, and you want to test this with your processes as you're building in automation, because if you automate a bad process, what do you think happens?
Bad things.
Well, the negative aspects of that process are magnified because it just happens over and over and over and over again. So you got to test this. There's an aspect of testing those processes, making sure they're going to work, and they're going to work effectively, and then deploying them out. So you still want to still want to make sure you're capturing everything. And you want to make sure that it's going to happen consistently, or it'll happen consistently, but you want to make sure that the right things are happening on a consistent basis. What this boils down to is we have an error, it follows the same process to resolve it. And if you get that same error, that same request again, you know it's going to follow that same exact process, whether it happens 1, 2, 3, or multiple times for your organization. You know that you got a consistent outcome, you've captured your best practices and are able to automate those, and you can ensure that your service agreements are being maintained with your customers. From a proactive standpoint, proactive processes, very simply, let's look at them from a standpoint of standard operating procedures. These are the things that have to be done every day, every week, every month for an organization, whether you're running a data center, you're running your private cloud. And proactive processes with automation in place allow us, again, to improve that SLA support because we're ensuring those things happen on a regular basis so that our systems are operating at their optimal level. We can support compliance because we have those automation activities captured and we have record of when they were run. We have process traceability. We can tell somebody what exactly is happening. We can see where a process is in its execution while it's running. We have that through things like the Orchestrator console. It improves productivity. I remember sitting down with one of our customers not more than a couple of months ago, and I was demonstrating the capabilities of Orchestrator to automate some of their proactive as well as reactive processes. Now, quite often when I've had this conversation, I've had IT pros look at me and go, "You've just worked me out of a job." That's a true statement. People have asked, well, what am I going to go do now? These guys looked at me and their eyes got big. They got really excited. And I said, so I don't need to have this conversation of why this isn't not going to work you out of a job? And they said, no, because now it means I can go work on that 80 other things that I can never get any time to go do because I'm so busy working on all this stuff that keeps recurring. So that's what we really focus on with automation. We look at supporting the IT pro and making it easier. Is how do we make it better for you, the IT pro, to focus on those things that are more important to the business, more interesting for you as an IT pro, because you get to really roll up and get your hands dirty, because you don't have to spend your time thinking or worrying about those reactive things that, at least I remember from my days, sucked up all my time. So those standard operating procedures help us improve productivity and really help us improve that operational ROI, because we can monitor, take action on errors that show up, and proactively address them before they actually impact service to our customers. So in this example, we're monitoring for a particular error, in this case a disk error using Operations Manager, and we're automatically initiating a change that deploys, takes a virtual machine, puts it in maintenance, creates an extra disk, updates the server, reconnects the disk, reconfigures the network, updates the associated service for that particular virtual machine, updates our CMDB, and closes the request. All from simply a monitor checking to see, hey, is my disk getting full? Do I need to extend it or expand it or add some more capacity to that service? We can standardize that. Means that happens. When it happens, we have a record of it. We know if it was successful, and then we can go back and do some further capacity planning and contribute to ongoing capacity activities within our organization. So that's a number of things. I want to step in and get into the tool set again and actually show you some of the capabilities of how we've actually built some of those auto remediation, actually show you how we've set up one particular example within System Center 2012 for a private cloud. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay. Let's go ahead. Now, the components I'm using here, I'm using, again, Operations Manager, Service Manager, and Orchestrator, all working together. First thing I want to show you is I'm going to get over into Orchestrator and show you a particular runbook that I have here. So I've got a runbook here from my application called Dinner Now. That in this runbook, what this runbook actually does is helps us remediate an error from my application. So we have a website set up, a website application called Dinner Now. Go ahead and bring that up here. You can see our application. This is like any line of business application we might have in our organization, that's hosted in our private cloud. Because private cloud's all about applications, being able to manage those and deliver service against those. We have an orchestrator runbook that helps us remediate errors related to that application by stepping through a series of activities that a support person might do if they ever receive an error related to this application. So we test we reset IIS, we reset the application pools. We do kind of the basic, the initial things that would show up at any, that a support person or an IT administrator, IT pro would do at any point in time if they get an error related to this application. What that allows us to do is alert comes in because the service is down, runbook is automatically invoked to do the initial steps to see, can I get this back up and running? If it works, hey, problem solved or error solved. If it doesn't, now let's get somebody involved to be able to really take a look and triage and determine what's actually happening here.
Now, Kenan showed a similar demo earlier where he showed, the basic website crashing, try to retest it, restart the app. He didn't really go into what then happens if it's not resolved. So your example kind of it goes a little further on this, right? Can you kind of, clarify the difference between, Kenan's isolated demo and then your more advanced demo where we're actually, looking at the ticketing process too?
Okay, so what would happen there? So Kenan showed the application, so showed our Dinner Now website up and running.
Yep.
Ran our little script to kill it.
Killed it.
Killed it. We saw the alert show up. We saw the runbook get executed. What you would also have seen is the incident get created. Now, say my runbook didn't finish successfully. So each time it all failed. What happens then? Well, the incident is still created. So one thing to note is when these runbooks are invoked, they're invoked from Service Manager through the connector, telling Orchestrator, go do this. Go run this runbook that you're seeing here on the screen to fix our application. If this runbook fails, it reports back to Service Manager and updates the incident that the runbook actually failed. And we can then we will see that activity inside the incident. Let me see if I can bring up a previous one run here. We would see that activity having failed, and we can, as part of managing that incident, then take action and either reassign it, or the person who owns that particular incident steps in and gets involved and takes a look at and can walk through further details and do further triaging, knowing that all of those steps had already been tried. So if I bring up a particular request, this one's already resolved. We should be able to see in our work log. No, this one didn't get updated. What we would see in our action log is an update for that particular runbook, showing that the runbook actually didn't work, or wrote back and gave us the details of what it was related to. How we would see that the runbook was unsuccessful, we would see our activities here on the window here. Instead of say completed, it would say failed. And we can go and take a look and get some more information. We can go link out to that particular runbook instance, look at the input and output parameters of that runbook. So if I bring up my particular runbook activity here, so we'd see our log entry. We've invoked my runbook. We see our parameter values. We see that it was successfully invoked. If it failed, we'd see the runbook having failed, and we can take action there. We can then link out. We see over here on the right-hand side of our screen, view most recent. That's not wanting to render very well for us. View associated runbooks. I can click on that. It's going to bring me into the Orchestrator web console. I can look up the actual details of that runbook instance that was running, and I can actually drill down and look at what step, what were the input, what were the output parameters of that particular activity, and I can get really detailed into what did we try and fix, what worked, what didn't. So instead of having to start from scratch, I can get more information about why this particular runbook failed and where I can start targeting my efforts to resolve it. So for the IT pro, it gives you a lot more information to point you in the right direction to actually help fixing an error, instead of coming at something blindly and not knowing, okay, I know the application is down, Where do I start
Where
looking?
go- yeah,
What do I start looking at? Okay, well, we've already encapsulated that. The runbook then tells us, I tried this failed. Okay, let's go take a look at, say, the application pool services.
Great. Now, you mentioned that there was a web-based interface for Orchestrator.
Yep, I've got it here on the screen that you're looking at right now.
Is there anything for Service Manager?
There's the service catalog.
Okay.
Is our web-based interface for either logging requests, viewing my requests, viewing activities that I have assigned to me as part of either a request or an incident. You would do that through the service catalog.
Now, would just the consumer of the service do that, or would the IT pro, the service manager guy, also be using that web-based catalog? Or would he primarily function within the fully fledged console?
They would probably function within the full console, but they could use the portal if they needed to respond to an incident, respond to an activity that was assigned to them, like I needed to approve a service request or approve a change request. You can do that through the actual service request portal yourself already.
Great. Now, as we kind of be discussing, this service delivery and automation, it seems like we've really coupled Service Manager and Orchestrator together. They're very close partners, but we have a question. Are they independent? Meaning, can I have Orchestrator without Service Manager, and likewise, could I have Service Manager without Orchestrator?
That's a really good question. So, yes, you can. Keep in mind that you get one with the other. So System Center 2012 is licensed as a single product now. So you're going to get both anyway. You don't need to use both at the same time. You can certainly use Orchestrator on its own. You can invoke and run kickoff runbooks. If you see the console here in front of us, I can actually initiate start jobs, stop jobs, start runbooks, stop runbooks right from my web console myself, not having to use it. I can also use Service Manager on its own. My preference, my approach on this is, hey, there's so much more that you can get using both together. That's why I show them
They are
working together.
complementary,
They are very complementary, and I really encourage customers, hey, if you're not using one, let's get you using both of them together. If you're only using one of them, because there's so much more value that you can get, both, again, from a proactive standpoint in terms of fulfilling requests, as well as from a reactive operations and being able to respond to errors in the environment.
So on the topic of integration, what are the different ways which Service Manager can receive an alert? I mean, we've seen things such as Operations Manager flagging something, Service Manager picks that up. It appears that runbooks, they could certainly go and kick off an incident ticket to Service Manager. Are there any other integrations? Could you do this via a script, via PowerShell? What are other ways that we can raise an incident through Service Manager?
Sure. Yes.
Okay, yes you can. Anything.
Pick one. Can we monitor, we can accept an email. We have a community, a Service Manager connector to Exchange that was written and is available as a community add-on. It's not baked as part of the product just yet, but it's something that's out there and is available that can accept inbound email requests. So we automatically log an incident or a request simply from an email. Again, using Orchestrator. That's why I talk about them together. Orchestrator, if I bring up the console, we have a series of, inside of monitor, one of our default standard activities. We can monitor disk space, event logs, internet applications, particular processes. We can monitor those using an Orchestrator runbook, and if we see something, see a condition met, create an incident. Create a request, create an alert inside of Operations Manager. So short answer is yes, we can. We've got a number of ways we can do it, whether it's from a third-party tool, using a runbook, we can monitor for a particular condition on a website or a process, or look for a specific message inside an event log, and create an incident from that.
Great. Well, while we're on the topic of kind of reviewing these integration packs, could you just quickly browse and just, give a brief overview of all of the default integration packs that we see? Yep. Maybe expand them just so our audience can kind of see what are all the different choices.
Sure.
What are the different components we can put in a workflow?
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and move this over. So I'm going to shrink the size of the runbook here so to make it easier. So we've got some standard activities under System here inside. I'm showing the System Center 2012 Orchestrator Runbook Designer. So this allows us to design and create and test runbooks. I have a number of standard activities on system option here for ending process, get SNMP variables, monitor SNMP traps, query WMI, restart a system, save an event log, run program, run .NET script, run SSH command, start stop service. That's one example. We schedule. We can monitor date and time. We can check a particular schedule. Under monitoring, we can get disk space status, IP, internet application status, process, service, monitor disk space, monitor event logs. Number of activities you can see there. I'm just flicking up on the screen. File management. We can compress files, copy folders, decompress, move files, monitor files, rename them. I mean, anything you want to do related to a file. We can send emails. We can issue notifications either to the event log, platform event, or syslog messages. We've got some utilities to be able to do file compares, format, date, time, generate random text and values, invoke web services, map network paths, query databases, query XML, read text logs, write to database, write a web page, or write to a web page. Virtual Machine Manager, that's one that we provide. So these are some of the commands that we can actually do to integrate. Now this is, again, orchestrated 2012, but we have an integration pack to Virtual Machine Manager 2008, R2, where we can actually create and issue commands to older versions of System Center. Hey, look here, I've got one for VMware. Right up here that allows us to actually interact with VMware, create virtual machine, customize virtual machine, get cluster properties, get data store properties, clone Linux VMs. This is Microsoft Orchestrator, but we can actually integrate directly to VMware's vSphere, connecting and using some standard activities to interact with their tools. Got one for Active Directory. I got one for Data Protection Manager. In this case, this is showing DPM 2010. Text files, Configuration Manager, Operations Manager, Service Manager, a Service Manager 2012 integration pack. So we have integration packs for the different versions because there are some slight changes between those. Virtual Machine Manager 2012, Netcool, Omnibus, being able to create alerts, delete alerts, monitor alerts, update alerts from there. And then runbook control, being able to set up initialized data variables or invoke other runbooks. So we can take an existing runbook and kick off another one from within an existing runbook.
Great.
So I just very quickly walked through, and that's not all of them.
You could, of course, add more. It's pretty easy.
Well, you can add more. There's a deployment manager tool that we've got that allows you to download an integration pack from our marketplace, where most of our integration packs are all published. Install those using the deployment manager and deploy them out to the computer that's got the runbook designer, and deploy them to the orchestrator server.
That's great. Now, you briefly touched on this, but I have a direct question on here. So if we want to go and manage a legacy system center component, let's say Configuration Manager 2007.
Yep.
Do we have separate integration packs for Configuration Manager 2012, Configuration Manager 2007? And can we function with both of those using Orchestrator 2012, Service Manager 2012?
Yes and yes.
Yes, you can.
So you need the orchestrator integration pack.
Okay.
For that particular application, for that particular component. So Configuration Manager 2007, we need that integration pack. You can't use a 2012 version integration pack with a 2007 or 2008 versioned application. You need the corresponding integration pack for that application.
That makes a lot of
in order
sense.
to make it work. That's just a simple thing to remember. You need to have that in place in order to make it work.
And hopefully a quick question here. Service Manager 2012, does it have outbound email capabilities? Such as you resolve a request, can it automatically go and send an email to someone to say, hey, it's solved?
Yes.
Great. Now, one final question here before we jump back. Now, obviously the CMDB, we've been talking about it a lot. It seems like an integral component just as far as our assessment planning, assessment management. What happens if I don't want to go and install Service Manager? Is it possible to get any of the functionality of the CMDB, or if I want to have the CMDB functionality, must I have Service Manager as part of the environment?
You need Service Manager contains the CMDB. They're not you can't separate them.
Okay.
The CMDB is part of the Service Manager component. You get and it's installed as part of the Service Manager software. There are some tools that have them separate. We don't. They are part and parcel of the same the same component of System Center 2012.
Excellent.
Okay. Let's get back to our presentation, because we're going to get on to probably one of my favorite parts.
And what is that?
Reporting.
Nice.
Now, I'll tell you why it is, and before I get into the details. I like the reporting because I have done this before, and I've had to pull data from multiple repositories, write scripts. I think I spent one time, this was a number of years ago, I spent about 2 weeks writing SQL queries and scripts appropriate to get the report that's case my manager wanted for me. And don't ask me about changing it. It was just getting it one. Now he said, oh, you know what, I want this, and I know everybody on the screen who's watching this is probably going, yeah, I remember that exact situation that you've been in. We make it with System Center 2012. We've actually greatly improved the reporting capabilities. And we are leveraging one of the most populous reporting tools on the planet, Excel, to do so.
Great.
So no more having to learn specialized reporting services scripts or customization. It's literally drag, drop, building a pivot table.
Nice.
So for those who aren't as familiar with business intelligence terms, I want to just go through a couple of concepts here. Also to help level set some of the terminology. From a business intelligence standpoint, we have what we call the business objective and a goal. Business objectives help us answer the question, why does your company or /team exist? Your objective when you're defining your, from a business intelligence standpoint, pardon the pun, must be dumb. Doable, understandable, manageable, and beneficial. Kind of like SMART goals: simple, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based. Your goals are your specific strategies used to accomplish a business objective. We then have metrics and KPIs. Metrics allow us to capture a measurement of a specific thing. An example, count of incidents, count of alerts, CPU utilization. We have key performance indicators, or KPIs. This is a metric that helps us understand how we're performing against our defined objective. And then our targets. Targets are our numerical values that are predetermined as an indicator of success or failure. So what are we trying to achieve is our target. That'll help us drive our behavior towards that particular goal. So some business intelligence terms. Now, data warehouse terminology, just to help make sure everybody's across this. A data warehouse is really optimized for analysis. It uses a traditional, what we call a star schema. It has what we call dimension tables that represent classes, properties, and enumerated values. And we have fact tables that represent relationships or specific measures and our key performance indicators, or KPIs. This is a conformed dimensional model that helps close the gap between what we call class-based model and a traditional relational database. It makes queries easier and simpler, and helps us flatten, in case of System Center, over 500 different types of classes to about 60 different dimensions. Now, the neat thing from a System Center data warehouse is we've managed all this complexity. So this is just knowing what's happening behind the scenes, but you don't have to do any coding in this respect. It actually does it all for you. Now, System Center 2012, specifically the Service Manager Data Warehouse, is a cross-System Center reporting solution. So we're able to pull data, and we actually pull data from Service Manager, Operations Manager, Configuration Manager, Virtual Machine Manager, and even Active Directory, to get that comprehensive view of IT from a reporting perspective. And allows us to enable direct publish of data to the data warehouse from even custom sources. So you can use a System Center, use it across System Center, or any custom SQL Server repository to actually get data into the data warehouse and leverage its capabilities to do your reporting. Now, report and dashboard authoring is done using OLAP cubes. Powered by the System Center Management Pack model, it allows us to use Microsoft Office to build our reports and our dashboards, whether using Microsoft Excel or using Office SharePoint, the performance point capabilities out of SharePoint Enterprise to build your own dashboards. That's our new report. That's our reporting platform. We still maintain the reporting capabilities that were present in Service Manager 2010, using SQL Server reporting services, and we've enhanced that using OLAP cubes in our data warehouse. What this allows us to do is to scale up and scale out to meet whatever our customers' needs. So we have a flexible deployment option. You can have a single data warehouse data mart server. You can have multiple data source servers connecting into a single one. It really is up to you and what your organization wants to do to achieve appropriate data warehouse reporting capabilities. So 3 areas that we provide reporting out as Service Manager 2012 Data Warehouse. One is SQL Server Reporting Services. Self-service reporting using either a browser or Service Manager console allows us to publish reports automatically to SharePoint, file share, or even send them via email. Authoring newer reports is using SQL Server Reporting Services tools, but we provide about 30 reports out of the box that you can tailor the values and attributes of each report and run those yourselves. Now, we also provide capabilities around reporting using Microsoft Excel. Now, this allows us to leverage Excel pivot tables that integrate into the Service Manager Data Warehouse Data Mart and take advantage of just out-of-the-box Excel capabilities to format and present our data. And then we can use that to actually build dashboards sitting on SharePoint Enterprise to into our data warehouse. So we maintain an ongoing dashboard, again, using out-of-the-box capabilities that are present in SharePoint Enterprise and Microsoft Excel to deliver a rich experience, reporting experience, again, leveraging data from across the System Center stack. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that is. I'm going to flick over now to my demo environment. And I'll go ahead and minimize that console and this console. Clean a few things up here. And I'm going to go over to my data warehouse workspace. So that's going to come up, and we're going to see in our data warehouse, I have a folder here called Cubes. Now, one of the things I mentioned is that the Service Manager Data Warehouse grabs data from across the System Center stack. Now, this is coming back. We see data that is presented back to us and a number of cubes that are made available to us. We have our Software Update Cube, which is pulling data from our Configuration Manager about software updates. We have our Service Manager Work Items Cube, Configuration Items Cube. We have a Power Management Cube, which is grabbing data about power management consumption. Our Change and Activity Management Cube, as well as our Service Catalog Library Cube, which allows us to report on service requests that are coming from the Service Catalog. How those open up, that's taking a little bit to respond here, but what we then do is bring that across into Excel. I've got an option that I've started creating here. Really took me about 5 minutes to pull this together prior to the session starting. I just wanted to make sure this was up and running. I have grabbed a couple of pieces of data about the different types of incidents that are showing up here inside of my Service Manager database. So I have the source of my incidents, the count of what those incidents are, and I created a simple chart. Now, I'm actually going to, instead of keeping on this, I'm actually going to show you how we got there. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a new pivot table. I'm going to use my existing connection because I've already got a connection into my Service Manager Data Warehouse. And it pops up a new pivot table and gives me a series of, wrong data connection. Let's just...
Now, I mean, is this fully customizable, though? You know, let's say I have custom management packs. I want to get data from that. You know, so I've written a custom management pack for Ops Manager. It goes and pushes data somewhere. Do I have any limits of pulling that data?
No, if the data, as long as that management pack is synchronized from Operations Manager into Service Manager, say for a distributed application, we can use it. We'll see it.
Great.
Inside here. So I've got a blank Excel spreadsheet. Now, how I got there is I started with my Service Manager Work Items cube, and I clicked on this little link over here on the right-hand corner. It says Analyze Cube in Excel. And that pops up my brand new spreadsheet here, which has a blank pivot table and a list of fields to select for my particular report down the right-hand side here. Now, there's two things to remember when you're creating a report. You have measures and you have dimensions inside of Service Manager. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the incident dimension, and I'm presented with a number of measures, incident measures. Now these are values that are captured as part of analyzing and cubing up my incident information. So I'm going to grab the count of incidents, or incident dim count. This tells me total number of incidents inside my CMDB. I got 49,000 of them. Okay, decent amount of number, but I want to know a little bit more. All I did is start clicking. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to my incident dim dimension. So not the measure, but the actual dimension. I'm actually going to look for the source of where these incidents came from.
Now, as we look at Excel, are there any limits of which version of Excel we have to use, or can you potentially use any version of Excel, but you're still limited within what features that version of Excel supports?
So I'm using Excel 2010,
okay.
Or Office 2010 here to build this particular report out. So simply by clicking incident source and incident dim, I have very quickly created a simple table for myself just by clicking a few fields of total number of incidents in my environment and where they came from. So I can see out of 49,000 incidents that were created, 48 of them came from Operations Manager. So I got some alerts showing up inside of Operations Manager, and quite a few of them being created. I must need to go in and start tuning some of my alerts and see what I need to start doing to address that. Now, I want to create a graph out of that. So instead of going and recreating my request or recreating these values and selecting them again, I'm just going to simply click over here on Insert and say Insert Pie Chart and click. And again, because I'm using pivot tables, that's automatically generated for me. And I can move and position that on my spreadsheet here very quickly and easily. So I have my screen. Now, a couple things also I want to do. Now, you know what? I want to drill down and look at this a little bit more. I want to do some further analysis here on my on the types of incidents that I've got here. Now, I could insert a new table, or I could copy and paste, and I have my exact same table again, and I can then start adding additional values to this. So I might not want to take incident source, but I'm going to look at the priority of those, or when it was opened. Nope, wrong one. I grabbed the wrong one. Sorry, that's the one I wanted. Anyway, you get what this allows me to do is very easily grab the particular details related to my incident and see the priorities of based on source, looking at the priorities of my particular incidents. And I can slice and dice them and manipulate the data to get the report that I want, and be able to present that and publish this to a dashboard, or publish it out to a file share, save this so other people can access it. If I go back and show some of those examples, these are some reports and tables and charts that I created very quickly using the new capabilities out of the reporting. And I'm pulling data from my OLAP cubes that's coming across the System Center stack. So really neat capability that's presented and available. And again, reporting cubes for work items, for every single work item across Configuration Manager for software updates, power management, and the like.
I mean, that's great. One of my favorite comments here, it's amazing how many service desk managers are drooling over this new reporting functionality.
And the neat thing from an IT pro standpoint is you can give it to them.
Right.
You don't have to build these reports for them. You say, hey, here you go. Create the report and give them the access to build the report, and let them think about and worry about what kind of report they want to build. You just provide the capabilities to do that.
Right.
So neat piece of functionality. We touched on a number of things. We touched on reporting. We touched on process automation. We touched on integration. Process automation highlights our CMDB and the power that we provide out of the System Center stack through the CMDB to give us, to drive processes, to drive standardization, to drive that consistency either in a proactive or reactive standpoint. Reporting allows us, is again, more of that self-service capabilities of being able to get information about what is happening inside of our, within our private cloud, within our data center environments. And the last area is that integration. Integration across the stack, but also outside of System Center 2012, outside of our private cloud, to really bring that private cloud to life, whether it's using our tools or whether it's using a multitude of management tools inside your organization to take advantage and deliver your own private cloud capabilities. This particular session, we spent our time talking about integration, talking about that process automation, and talking about that reporting. And hey, my encouragement to everybody is go try it out. Don't take my word for it. Go have a play.
Great. Well, before you parachute out of here, I've got a few other different questions for you, but only you're going to be able to answer them. So we are going to go on for about an extra 5 minutes.
Okay, I'm fine.
Just to take some questions here. So the first question we have, what is the best practice around separating the Service Manager DW database from the regular Service Manager database, the data warehouse database from the traditional database?
So separating them. They are actually separate databases.
Okay.
You can, now technically, you could actually have them residing on the same physical host or even within the same virtual machine on a particular host. They are, best practice is probably to have them in separate virtual machines or even on separate hosts because they can get big depending on the organization and the environment, and the data processing that takes place, especially on the data warehouse, can sometimes be or can chew up cycles. So you want, and they are resource. They do require some hefty resources to run them, and the details of what our minimum specs, they're all documented in our documentation on TechNet. So really good practice. I often recommend is have them separate. You can't technically they can be in the same environment, but have them separate.
Okay, great. Now the next one, as we've looked at these runbooks, we've talked about one of the strengths being that it's drag and drop. You actually don't need to write code to go and build these. What happens if you actually like code and you want to go and really manipulate things? Do you have the option to really drill down and view and edit the underlying code that's generated, either to create the workbook or that's generated as it runs?
So we use the Open Data Protocol, so you can expose the runbook information if you wish. I wouldn't recommend it because you would really need to know how this is all built together. Best practice would be use the runbook designer.
That's the safe choice.
It's the recommended choice. It's if you're going to deliver do you want to do some coding? Do you want to do some scripting? Write your PowerShell script, write your .NET script, and call it using one of the standard activities.
Okay, great. Now, we do have a few more questions about the release management you had. Does Service Manager 2012 support legacy release management solutions?
Not entirely sure I understand the
So I would assume third-party, just external release management solutions. Like, could it integrate with TFS, for example?
So TFS is a good one. We don't have an integration at the moment for TFS to Service Manager. We have an integration for TFS to Operations Manager. Now, could you build that integration or could you create that integration? Yes, using Orchestrator to actually create that integration between those systems. To a legacy release management tool, maybe non-Microsoft, again, I would look at what are the capabilities of that other tool set to accept inputs from external systems. And then I would look at leveraging Orchestrator to either run an API program, run a PowerShell script, or run a .NET script to actually execute, or initiate a web service.
Great.
To actually interact with that legacy system.
Okay, so in theory with Orchestrator, should be able to get around.
Yes, we can.
Now, regarding the whole release management and the series of processes, we have a question whether this would be the appropriate vehicle for this scenario. First is just around an end-to-end Windows 7 deployment. From, I have a new laptop, I want to install things on it, when it's done, send an email, say it's complete. Could you fit that into the release management process?
Could you? Yes. I'd probably want to sit down and walk through what the specific activities that the customer wants to do, because we have there's a number of ways that we can initiate it. We could use release management to manage the overall rollout of, say, Windows 7 to a number of machines. or initiate or roll out the process and then kicks off an MDT deployment that we also have capabilities for to actually script the installations. So there's a number of ways to actually do it. Yes, you could, but I'd want to look at how we could leverage, say, release management in concert with other tool sets that we have to actually provide a holistic approach.
Great.
Think of release management as really driving the processes behind how you manage the rollout of a particular release into that organization.
Great. Now, second question related to could you use the release management process? How about a series of patches? Now, I don't mean, an orchestrated cluster patch, but I have 50 laptops. I need to patch them all. Could we use this process to do this kind of end-to-end inventory? Check them, patch them, confirm that they're all done.
You could use a change management or change request to deliver that. You could also just simply create an orchestrator runbook.
Probably be easier, right?
To manage that change process. And in fact, we've seen that done within Microsoft. They use Orchestrator to help manage their patch release. So we go through our own patch cycle. We patch any number of or several 100,000 machines on a monthly basis, and we get a certain number that aren't successful. Now, instead of physically sending somebody to each one of those machines to update them, we actually leverage Orchestrator to go and attempt to redeploy that patch. And that usually gets the number down to maybe 10, 50, maybe 100 machines that we actually have to go and physically check on, as opposed to maybe a couple thousand. Because, even 9% of several 100,000 machines is still a large number.
Right.
Leveraging Orchestrator, that drops that number, say, down to like 1 or 2%.
Excellent. Now, we've got a lot of great feedback about these reports, but we have a question here. Can we get end users the ability to generate their own reports?
Yes.
Is that SharePoint, via Excel? What are the different options that we can enable them?
The report that I started creating, I can save that and I can put it on a file share and give anybody access to that file. And they can then have access to those fields and create their own report. They can save that report. That report is then viewable back into the Service Manager console and accessible by anybody they choose, or they can save it on their own local file share and we maintain the data connection. As long as that user's got credentials to access Service Manager, they can take that report, that Excel file, and create whatever report they want.
And in theory, they could publish it to SharePoint?
Absolutely. Not in theory. In practice, they can publish that to SharePoint. They can use Performance Point if they're using SharePoint Enterprise, and they can generate their own report from there as well.
Excellent. Well, that about wraps it up. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
As we summarize, you've heard a lot more about service delivery and automation, but really how to monitor and operate it. So thank you for your time. Next, we have Adam coming in, and he's going to wrap up this Jumpstart by talking about application management, again, focusing on how we monitor and operate the system. Thanks again, Sean.
Thanks, Simon, for having me.